Welcome to RestCabin, your cozy sanctuary for deep relaxation and peaceful sleep. Tonight, we begin a soothing narrative journey called the Mapmaker of the Hidden Valley. Let yourself unwind, breathe deeply, and drift away into a world of pure tranquility as we follow a quiet path into a forgotten sanctuary. The gentle, rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner of the room was the only sound that broke the deep, velvet silence of the autumn night. Ethan sat at his heavy oak desk, the surface illuminated by the soft amber glow of a single brass banker's lamp. For over 40 years, he had lived in this quiet coastal town in New England, nestled between rolling hills and the vast, whispering Atlantic Ocean. He was a cartographer, a mapmaker, one of the last of his kind who still drew lines by hand with fine ink pens and thick, textured parchment that smelled faintly of vanilla and aged wood. His world was one of precise measurements, gentle curves, and the quiet satisfaction of capturing the physical world on paper. Outside his window, a cool October breeze rustled through the crimson and gold leaves of the ancient maple trees, sending a shower of dry foliage dancing across the cobblestone driveway. Ethan adjusted his spectacles and took a slow, deliberate sip from his mug of chamomile tea, feeling the warmth spread gently through his chest. Tonight, he wasn't working on a commission for the town council, nor drawing boundaries for local property owners. Tonight, he was simply exploring. On his lap rested a heavy, leather-bound chest he had rescued from the deepest corner of the town library's historical archives. His old friend Clara, the librarian, had told him it once belonged to an early settler from the late 1700s, a surveyor who had explored the uncharted wilderness beyond the rocky valleys. With slow, careful movements, Ethan lifted the brass latch. It opened with a soft, satisfying groan of old metal. Inside lay a single rolled scroll of thick, heavy vellum, tied with a faded satin ribbon that had turned from vibrant emerald to a dusty, muted sage green. His heart did not race, for everything in his life happened at a measured, peaceful pace, but a quiet curiosity filled his mind. He untied the ribbon with practiced patience, smoothing the parchment down onto his desk and holding it flat with two heavy brass paperweights shaped like compass roses. As the map unrolled beneath the warm lamplight, Ethan let out a soft breath of admiration. It was a masterpiece of old-world drafting. The ink, though faded to a deep sepia tone, remained remarkably sharp. The map detailed an area just 12 miles north of his own cottage, a region of dense, protected forest known locally as the Whispering Pines. But as his eyes traced the beautifully drawn topography, he realized this map held something modern satellite images had simply forgotten to notice. Right in the center of the forest canopy, hidden between two steep, jagged ridges, the old surveyor had drawn a perfectly circular valley labeled in elegant, flowing cursive, the Valley of the Silver Wells. Around it, tiny illustrations showed weeping willows, soft fern glades, and slow-moving streams converging into a still, glassy pool at the center. In the margin, in a steady, serene hand, was a short note. Here, the world holds its breath. The air is sweet with the scent of wild balsam, and the mind finds an absolute, unbroken peace. A sanctuary for the weary traveler. Ethan leaned back in his leather chair, studying the page. He knew the whispering pines well, or so he had thought. He had mapped its outer edges decades earlier, but the interior had always seemed too dense, too steep, too uniform to bother exploring. Modern life had simply passed it by, moving instead along the paved roads that skirted the edge of the green wilderness. But this map felt like an invitation, a guide to a place where time itself seemed to slow to a stop. He glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. He knew he should sleep, but the image of that quiet, forgotten valley stayed with him. With calm and absolute certainty, he decided that at dawn he would leave his desk behind, lace up his oldest walking boots, and find this hidden sanctuary for himself. He wanted to breathe that sweet, balsam air, to feel that unbroken peace firsthand. He rolled the map carefully, feeling the textured ridges of the old parchment beneath his fingertips, and tied the sage green ribbon into a neat, secure bow before tucking it into his rucksack, alongside a fresh leather journal, his favorite brass fountain pen, a small loaf of homemade oat bread, and a thermos of hot tea. He turned off the lamp, letting the study fall into the soft, silver light of the autumn moon. Climbing the creaking wooden stairs, he paused at the hallway window. The stars were bright and clear, scattered like sharp points of light across a deep indigo sky. The wind had died down completely, leaving the night perfectly still, as though the world itself were preparing him for the quiet journey ahead. He settled into bed, pulling a heavy, hand-woven wool blanket up to his chin. The distant, steady sound of ocean waves against the shore carried him gently into a deep, dreamless sleep, his mind at rest, ready for the morning light. The morning arrived not with a burst of sunlight, but with the slow, gentle awakening of the earth. A soft, milky fog had rolled in from the Atlantic, wrapping the coast in a quiet shroud of silver and gray. Ethan woke before his alarm, feeling completely refreshed. He dressed in layers of warm flannel, pulled on thick wool socks, and laced up his worn leather boots. After a simple breakfast of hot oatmeal and honey, he slung the canvas rucksack over his shoulders and stepped outside. The crisp morning air was cool against his face, carrying the clean scent of salt water and damp earth. The world felt utterly still as he started his old station wagon and drove north, toward the edge of the whispering pines. Within half an hour, the paved coastal road gave way to gravel, and the gravel narrowed into a dirt track that ended at the forest's edge. Ethan parked beneath the spreading branches of a massive red oak, its crimson leaves heavy with dew, and stepped out into the silence. Entering the forest felt like walking into a great, living cathedral. The canopy of towering white pines and old hemlocks grew so dense overhead that the morning fog was trapped beneath it, softening every distance into a dreamlike haze. Following the old surveyor's map, tucked safely in his coat pocket, Ethan bypassed the marked trails that summer tourists usually followed. Instead, he navigated by the natural landmarks sketched on the parchment. When he found the twin boulder formation, known locally as the Sleeping Bears, covered in a thick carpet of emerald moss, he turned sharply to the northwest. The ground beneath his boots was soft and forgiving, padded by years of fallen pine needles that muffled every step. There was no hum of distant traffic here, no airplanes overhead, only the gentle rhythm of his own breathing, the occasional crunch of a dry twig, and the far-off call of a chickadee somewhere high in the branches. The deeper he walked, the more the air seemed to change. The salty tang of the ocean faded, replaced by the rich, comforting scent of damp earth, old wood, and sweet, resinous balsam pine. Ethan moved with a slow, deliberate pace, appreciating every curve of the landscape the way only a mapmaker could. He watched the morning light burn gently through the fog, casting long golden beams through the trees and illuminating tiny drifting particles of dust like distant stars. He paused beside a small, crystalline stream trickling over smooth gray stones, the water so clear he could see every pebble at the bottom. Kneeling, he dipped his hand into the cold water and splashed it lightly on his face, feeling a wave of clarity wash over him. Consulting the map once more, he saw he was nearing the steep ridges guarding the hidden valley. The trail grew steeper, and he planted his boots carefully among the exposed roots of ancient trees. Yet he did not feel tired. The clean, oxygen-rich air seemed to fill him with quiet energy, and the forest around him felt old, stable, and wise, as though it had been waiting patiently for him to find it. At the crest of the first ridge, the dense pine forest gave way to a grove of ancient white birches. Their papery, silver bark caught the sunlight, and their remaining leaves, a brilliant translucent yellow, fluttered like thousands of tiny golden coins. Ethan paused, leaning against a sturdy trunk, and took a long, warm sip of tea from his thermos, letting its heat travel through him, matched by the gentle warmth of the sun now breaking through the canopy. According to the sepia lines of the map, the entrance to the Valley of the Silver Wells lay just beyond the next dip in the ridge, hidden behind a curtain of weeping willows and wild ferns. He could feel a subtle shift in the air, a deep, heavy stillness settling over everything. The wind among the birches had gone completely quiet. Not a single leaf stirred. It was exactly as the old surveyor had written more than 200 years before. The world was beginning to hold its breath. With a quiet sense of anticipation, Ethan packed away his thermos, smoothed the map one final time, and drew a deep breath of the sweet balsam air. He stepped forward, moving down the gentle slope toward the curtain of green and silver foliage, marking the edge of the unknown. He pushed through the thick, draping willow branches, their slender leaves brushing softly against his face like silk. As he stepped onto the valley floor, the transition was so complete that he stopped in his tracks. The world did not simply feel quiet, it felt entirely motionless. The Valley of the Silver Wells opened before him, exactly as the old surveyor had drawn it, a perfect hidden circle cradled between two steep, rocky ridges. The air here felt different, thicker, softer, remarkably clean, holding a coolness that settled against the skin like a gentle compress. The scent of wild balsam mingled with the delicate fragrance of late-blooming woodland orchids. The valley floor was a lush carpet of soft ferns and pale green moss rolling gently toward the center. No wind reached down into this hollow. The tall grass stood perfectly upright, and the leaves of every tree hung completely still, as if painted onto the landscape. Ethan walked down the gentle slope, his boots sinking soundlessly into the deep moss, each step like walking across plush velvet. At the center of the valley lay the glassy pool described in the old notes, fed by 3 tiny streams that slipped silently down the mossy rocks of the northern ridge without a single ripple disturbing the surface. He knelt at the water's edge and looked down. The pool was impossibly deep, yet the water so clear it seemed almost invisible. Thousands of smooth white stones lined the bottom, catching the afternoon light and casting a soft silver glow upward through the water. It was easy to understand why the old surveyor had named this place the Silver Wells. The surface reflected the deep blue sky above, and the crowns of white birch trees ringing the pool like a perfect mirror. For a moment, Ethan felt as though he stood on the edge of a sky hidden within the earth. Beside the pool stood an old weathered stone bench, half swallowed by moss and ivy, carved from the ridge itself centuries ago, a resting place built for weary travelers. Ethan set down his rucksack and lowered himself onto the cool stone with a long, slow sigh of relief. The tiredness of the hike melted away instantly, replaced by a deep, heavy sense of relaxation that spread from his feet all the way up through his body. He unrolled the old map one final time and read the familiar words in the margin. Here, the world holds its breath. It was entirely true. No insects buzzed, no birds called, no leaves rustled. The silence was not empty or lonely. It was full, comforting, restorative, wrapping around him like a heavy, warm quilt. It was the kind of silence that let a person hear their own quietest thoughts, or better still, let go of thinking altogether. He set the map aside and pulled out his leather journal and brass fountain pen, wanting to capture this moment the way he had captured the physical world for 40 years. He pressed the fine nib to the clean page. October 14th, he wrote, his handwriting slowing to match the rhythm of the valley. I have found the Silver Wells. The air is as sweet as promised, and the silence is a living presence. Standing here, the rush of the modern world feels like a distant, irrelevant dream. Time does not matter in this place. The water is still, the trees are still, and for the first time in many years, my heart is completely still. The soft scratch of the pen against the paper was the only sound in the entire valley, soothing and hypnotic, blending perfectly into the surrounding quiet. Ethan described the silver light on the water, the exact shade of the moss, the incredible weight of the stillness in the air. With every line he wrote, another layer of tension slipped away. His shoulders dropped, his breathing deepened. A quiet contentment settled into his chest. The afternoon sun began its slow descent behind the western ridge, casting long, cool shadows across the valley floor. The bright silver light on the pool softened into warm amber, then gentle twilight blue. Ethan capped his pen and let the journal rest open on his lap. He closed his eyes for a moment, simply to listen to the stillness, to let the unbroken peace of the silver wells settle fully into his senses. Twilight deepened, painting the sky above the circular valley in soft shades of lavender, plum, and indigo. The last rays of golden sun slipped behind the high ridges, leaving the valley bathed in calm, dim, enchanting half-light. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, feeling a pleasant heaviness settle over his eyelids. The air had grown cooler, crisp and fresh, and the scent of wild balsam seemed to deepen with the evening dampness. He looked once more at the glassy pool. The bright silver reflections of the afternoon had shifted into a dark, perfect mirror, holding the first few stars of evening as they blinked softly into the twilight sky. The tiny streams continued their silent journey down the mossy rocks, feeding the pool without a single splash, preserving that same unbroken stillness. Ethan felt no urge to hurry. In this valley, every movement was meant to be slow, deliberate, unrushed. With gentle, easy motions, he tucked the journal back into his rucksack and rolled the old map, feeling its familiar texture beneath his fingers one last time before tying the sage ribbon into a careful bow and slipping it into its protective sleeve. He took a final warm sip of tea, feeling its heat travel down through his chest, warming him fully against the gathering evening chill. Rather than hike back through the darkening woods, Ethan decided to rest right there, on the moss-covered bench, until his body felt fully restored. He drew out the heavy wool blanket he had packed, thick and gray, carrying the faint scent of lavender and cedar from his linen closet back home. He unfolded it slowly, the fabric releasing a soft, whispery rustle in the still air, and wrapped it snugly around his shoulders, tucking it in around his chest and legs. He leaned his head back against the smooth, curved stone, the moss beneath him as soft and supportive as a down pillow. He closed his eyes, letting his arms rest limply beneath the warm wool, and turned his attention fully to the rhythm of his own breath, matching it to the deep stillness surrounding him. He drew in a long, slow breath of cool, balsam-scented air, held it gently, and let it go in a slow, steady sigh. With every exhale, another trace of tension dissolved quietly into the earth. The silence of the valley wrapped around him like a protective shield, holding the noise and hurry of the modern world far, far away. Here, there were no deadlines, no lines to draw, no maps left to finish. There was only this present moment, a quiet pocket of forgotten time where he was completely safe, completely warm, and completely at peace. As the minutes drifted by like fallen leaves settling on still water, Ethan's mind floated gently into a state of pure, effortless relaxation. The heavy warmth of the wool blanket kept him perfectly cozy, a small sanctuary of comfort in the cool autumn night. He felt his heartbeat slow into a calm, steady rhythm. His thoughts softened into vague, beautiful images: silver water, golden birch leaves, a clear indigo sky scattered with endless stars. High above the ridges, the night sky deepened into a dark velvet canopy, crowded with countless quiet stars. A gentle silver moonlight began to filter down into the hollow, casting long, soft shadows across the emerald moss and settling over the sleeping cartographer. The ancient trees stood like silent, patient guardians around the pool, watching over a sanctuary that had remained unchanged for centuries. Ethan's breathing grew deep, slow, and perfectly even. The heavy, gentle sleep that had been calling to him since the moment he first unrolled the old map finally washed over him like a warm, quiet wave. His mind let go of its last thought, drifting softly across the border into deep, uninterrupted rest. The valley held its breath around him, dark, still, and peaceful, watching over the Mapmaker as he slept beside the silver wells, safe, warm, and utterly at peace, all the way until morning.